Story 1. Room 104. The Man in the Window. You ever pass by an old roadside motel, the kind that still has vacancy signs flickering in red neon, and wonder who's inside? Or worse, what's waiting for you inside if you decide to check in? These aren't just stories. They're real accounts, shared by people who wish they had never turned that rusty doorknob. Tonight, you'll hear the first of 3 terrifying true motel stories that might make you rethink your next stopover. Let's begin with Room 104, and the man who watched from the window. When Alex Martinez checked into the Restwell Inn, he was just looking for somewhere to crash before the long haul to Phoenix. He'd been on the road for almost 10 hours, eyelids heavy, and every fast food coffee he'd gulped had lost its effect. The glowing vacancy sign beckoned like a lighthouse in a storm. The place was older, brick structure, single story, and too quiet for a Saturday night. The check-in clerk was a wiry man in his 60s, with thick glasses and a name tag that read Lester. He didn't say much. Just slid the room key across the counter with a grunt. Room 104. No smoking. Don't open the windows. Alex chuckled. Don't open the windows? That's a new one. Lester didn't laugh. I'm serious. The air outside was dry and still, but as Alex approached room 104, a strange sensation crept up his neck. There were a dozen rooms, all aligned in a perfect row, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that only his room had something off. A feeling like someone had just been inside, watching. He shook it off as road weariness. The room was plain, beige carpet, green curtains, and a bedspread that had seen better decades. The air smelled like old wood and lemon cleaner. But what drew his attention immediately was the large window beside the bed. The blinds were pulled down, but a sliver had been left open. Alex walked over, peered through it, and instantly recoiled. There was a man standing on the other side. Right there. Inches away. Smiling. Alex stumbled back, heart pounding. But when he looked again, the man was gone. No footsteps. No shadow retreating. Just empty night and the faint sound of a buzzing street lamp. He rushed outside. The lot was empty. Deserted. Trying to calm himself, Alex reasoned it away. Probably my own reflection. Or a trick of the light. He locked the door, secured the latch, and yanked the blinds shut. Then he did what any tired traveler would do, turned on the TV and crashed. Sometime in the night, Alex woke up gasping. The room was freezing. His breath came out in white puffs. The heater was still running, but it felt like the cold was seeping from the walls. From the window. Then he noticed the blinds. They were open again. Not fully. Just an inch. Just enough for someone outside to see in. He stared at the sliver of darkness beyond the glass, afraid to approach. Every hair on his body stood upright. Slowly, he inched toward the window, each step a test of courage. And as he reached for the blinds, a face appeared, pressed right up against the glass. This time, it wasn't smiling. The eyes were sunken, skin gray and cracked like old cement. The man's face looked decayed, dead, but his expression was unmistakable, rage. His mouth opened wide, wider than any human mouth should, and he slammed his hand against the glass. Alex screamed and fell backward. The lamp crashed to the floor. He fumbled with his phone, hands trembling too much to dial. But when he finally looked up, the face was gone. He didn't sleep. Just sat in the corner until morning, staring at the window, which somehow was now closed again. Locked from the inside. At dawn, Alex stumbled to the front office. Lester was already behind the desk, as if he hadn't moved since the night before. I want another room, Alex blurted. Or better yet, I'm leaving. Lester didn't even blink. You saw him, didn't you? Alex froze. Who? The man in the window. Alex's mouth went dry. You knew something was in there? I told you not to open the window, Lester said quietly. Not everyone listens. But he always comes to room 104. Always has. Alex stared in disbelief. So you let people stay in there? Knowing what? It doesn't matter, Lester muttered, eyes dropping. He shows up anyway. Window open or not. Doesn't like being seen. Doesn't like being ignored. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Has anyone ever been hurt? Lester didn't answer. Just slid a folded paper toward him across the counter. It was a faded newspaper clipping, yellowed and brittle. Local traveler found dead in motel room. Eyes missing. The photo beneath the headline showed room 104. Alex grabbed his keys and ran. He didn't even return the room key. He didn't care. He drove for 6 straight hours without stopping, without looking back. That night, at a rest stop in New Mexico, he finally allowed himself to sleep. The warmth of the day had returned, and the world seemed safe again. Until he looked out the car window. There, standing under a flickering streetlight, was the man. Same gray skin. Same hollow stare. Just watching. Alex sped away. But deep down, he knew he'd never truly leave room 104 behind. Some motel rooms offer more than just a place to rest. Some contain echoes of those who never checked out. Room 104 is still listed at the Restwell Inn. Still cleaned. Still available. But no matter how long the curtains stay drawn, no matter how secure the lock, there's always someone watching, from the window. Story 2. The vacancy sign never turns off. Some motels are stuck in time, relics of the past clinging to life along deserted highways. But what if a motel wasn't just forgotten? It was deliberately avoided. This next terrifying true tale follows a young couple who stumbled into a place no one dares speak about. Once they checked in, they discovered the vacancy sign was more than just neon. It was a warning. Grace and Darren had been dating for 5 years when they decided to take a spontaneous road trip to celebrate their engagement. The plan was simple. No schedule, no reservations. Just drive, explore, and make memories. It was nearing midnight on their 3rd day when they found themselves far off the main highway, deep in the backroads of Oregon. Their GPS had lost signal hours ago, and they were both running on caffeine and static-filled radio. Then they saw it, a flickering red sign glowing through the mist like a beacon. Vacancy. The Old Pine Motel. It was nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering evergreens. The building looked forgotten, its wooden exterior warped with age. But the sign buzzed brightly, defiant against the silence of the woods. Maybe it's a hidden gem, Grace joked, trying to make the best of their situation. Darren pulled into the gravel lot, tires crunching beneath them. There were no other cars. No visible lights inside. Just that sign. They walked to the front desk, which was behind a dusty glass window. A brass bell sat on the counter. Darren rang it. The chime echoed unnaturally loud. Several minutes passed before a woman appeared. Pale, middle-aged, dressed in what looked like a faded maid's uniform. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're lucky," she said, voice raspy. "Only one room left." Grace glanced around. "It doesn't seem busy." The woman's smile widened. "That's because no one ever leaves." They laughed nervously, assuming it was an odd joke. She handed them a metal key on a heavy ring. Room 7. The corridor smelled of mildew and forgotten time. Paint peeled from the walls. Carpet squished with unseen dampness. Every room they passed was closed. Silent. Until they reached room 7. Inside, the room was, surprisingly clean. Not new, but well-maintained. A queen-sized bed, nightstands, a TV bolted to the wall. The lampshade had a small tear, and the wallpaper was floral, outdated but charming. "Weird vibe, huh?" Darren muttered as he locked the door. Grace nodded. "Let's just sleep. Leave early." But sleep didn't come easy. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Grace awoke to the sound of whispering. Not in the room, from the hallway. Faint, dry voices muttering just beyond the door. At first, she thought she was dreaming. But then she heard the unmistakable click of their doorknob being tested. She bolted upright. Darren stirred beside her. "What's wrong?" "Someone's out there," she whispered. Darren got up and tiptoed to the peephole. His body went rigid. "No one's there." He didn't mention what he really saw, a blurred figure standing too close to the door, face pressed against the wood, unmoving. No sound. No movement. Just waiting. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. They didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At sunrise, they packed to leave. Grace opened the door and gasped. There was muddy handprints smeared across the floor outside room 7, leading to the next door. Then the next. And then, looping back to theirs. It was as if something had been crawling, room to room. They rushed to the front desk. The woman was gone. The lobby deserted. The bell was still warm from their ring the night before. Outside, they froze. Every single car in the lot, including theirs, had been vandalized. Tires slashed. Windows fogged from the inside. And the vacancy sign. It wasn't flickering anymore. It was pulsing. Like a heartbeat. Grace tried the motel phone. Dead. Darren pulled out his cell. Somehow had 1 bar of signal. "I'm calling a tow truck," he said, pacing near the office window. "We're not staying another second." Grace remained frozen. "Darren, look." Across the road, hidden behind trees, were rows of crosses. Wooden. Hand-carved. Dozens of them. All facing the motel. They weren't graves. They were warnings. A tow truck arrived a half-hour later. The driver, a gruff man in his 60s, refused to step out of his truck. "You stayed here?" he asked, not hiding his concern. "At the old Pine?" Grace nodded slowly. "What is this place?" He sighed, shaking his head. "Used to be a normal place. But folks started disappearing. Rooms would be rented out, but no one ever checked out. Whole families vanished. Some say the motel feeds off them." Darren frowned. "That's insane." The driver lowered his voice. "Ever wonder why the vacancy sign never turns off? It's always hungry. Always ready. Once you're in, something watches. And if it likes you." He didn't finish. They towed the car in silence. Grace and Darren drove the rest of the trip in silence. When they reached a real hotel 2 states away, they threw out their clothes, broke the keychain in half, and never spoke of it again. But sometimes, late at night, Grace wakes up to check her phone, and there it is. A notification. Sent from an unknown number. A photo. It's the front of the Old Pine Motel. Room 7's door is open. And standing just inside is her. The worst motel isn't the one that charges too much or smells like mold. It's the one that remembers you. That tracks you. That waits for you to come back. Even if you never intend to. The vacancy sign never turns off. And it never stops calling.
Story 3. The room that wasn't on the map. Most travelers rely on reviews, photos, or recommendations when booking a motel. But some places don't show up on Google. They don't have websites. And yet they exist. This final story is about a man who was lured to a motel that shouldn't have existed. A place that offered him shelter from a storm, but gave him something far worse in return. There was no record of the room he stayed in. Not even the motel knew it existed. Thomas Warner was a travel photographer, a solo adventurer who loved exploring forgotten towns and rural roads. His job often led him into the outskirts of civilization, and he had grown comfortable sleeping in motels, gas stations, and the occasional car seat. It was mid-October when he found himself navigating through rural New Mexico, chasing a desert thunderstorm that had rolled in with terrifying force. Wind whipped through the canyons. Lightning slashed the sky. Roads began to flood. He knew he needed to stop for the night. That's when he saw the motel. Desert Bloom Inn. It stood alone at the edge of a two-lane road, surrounded by desert scrub and distant mountains. Its neon sign flickered in soft pinks and greens, almost inviting. He hadn't seen it listed online, but storms often knocked out cell service. And right now, all that mattered was shelter. He pulled into the lot. The pavement was cracked, and the surrounding area looked abandoned. But the office door creaked open as he approached. A man, tall, thin, wearing a red vest and no name tag, greeted him. "Storm's a nasty one," he said, voice low and even. "We have a room for you. Just one." Thomas nodded, paid in cash, and was handed a brass key. The tag read, "Room 212. Odd, he thought. There didn't seem to be a second floor. He walked the length of the building. The rooms were numbered 101 to 111. No stairs. No elevator. He turned the corner. Nothing. Confused, he walked back to the office, but it was locked. The interior lights off. The man gone. The key was still in his hand. That's when he saw it, at the far end of the lot, past the last unit, hidden by a lean-to of overgrown brush and sand-blown fencing, a door. It was freestanding. No building. Just a door frame bolted into concrete, its wood rotted and warped. Room 212. It shouldn't exist. But the key fit perfectly. When he opened the door, cold air spilled out, heavy and damp like a cellar. The inside was pitch black. He stepped through. The second he crossed the threshold, he felt it, a shift, like stepping out of sync with time. The wind vanished. The storm outside no longer roared. It was as if the room were sealed in a vacuum. He flipped the light switch. The room lit up with a soft orange glow. It looked normal, at first. A bed with stiff linens. A small table. A dresser with a mirror above it. A bathroom to the left. All the typical motel furnishings. But everything was off. The wallpaper was patterned with eyes. Hundreds of them, each one slightly different. The TV had no power cord. The window looked out onto static, like a broken television screen instead of an outside world. Thomas took a step forward, and the door behind him slammed shut. He lunged back to open it, but it was gone. The door had become a wall. He was trapped. He paced the room, searching for escape, for logic. He knocked on the walls. They felt soft, like flesh beneath drywall. The floor pulsed faintly under his feet. That's when the TV turned on, despite having no power. Snow. Static. Then an image. It was himself, standing in the motel room, confused, panicked. The feed was live, from above, as if filmed from the ceiling. He looked up. Nothing was there. The screen shifted. Now it showed other people. Dozens of them. Men, women, children. All in room 212, just like him. Sitting. Screaming. Some curled up in the corner. Others clawing at the walls. One by one they faded. Disappeared. Then it cut to black. On the screen, red letters appeared. "Do not fall asleep." Thomas backed away. The room was alive. Watching. Waiting. He curled up in the chair, clutching his camera like a lifeline. Hours passed. The lights dimmed. The wallpaper eyes blinked. He fought sleep with every ounce of strength. But eventually he dozed off. And when he awoke, he wasn't alone. There was something in the bed. A shape beneath the sheets. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. But it was there. Large. Human-shaped. Thomas backed away, heart racing, reaching for the bathroom. He flicked on the light. Every inch of the mirror was scratched with writing. Hundreds of messages. Desperate. Crazed. But one phrase repeated again and again. "Wake up before it does." The moment he turned, the bedsheets shifted. The figure rose. Slowly. No face. No features. Just shadow wrapped in skin, like something pretending to be human. Thomas ran. He slammed against the wall where the door had been. Begged. Cried. Screamed. Then, as if in response, a new door formed. Not behind him. Not on the wall. In the mirror. It shimmered liquid-like. Beckoning. He had no choice. He dove through. Thomas woke up in his car. Rain pelted the windshield. His camera sat on the passenger seat. The road ahead was the same stretch he'd been driving before the storm. There was no sign of the Desert Bloom Inn. He pulled into the nearest gas station hours later. He asked the clerk about the motel. The man laughed. That place burned down in 1973. Whole thing vanished in a fire. People say it was cursed. There was no room 212. It was never built. Blueprints stopped at 111. Thomas tried to show the man his camera. But every photo was corrupted. Every video glitched. All except one. A single image, burned into the memory card. Thomas asleep in room 212. And standing over him, the faceless shape. Eyes open. Watching. Not every room in a motel is meant to be found. Some doors should never be opened. And some rooms, they don't exist on the map because they don't belong in our world. If you see a room number that doesn't fit, walk away. Because once you're inside, the room remembers you, and it will be waiting forever for you to come back.